You're listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma, and I'm your host, Trish Close. Norman Van Aken on the podcast today, and can I just say, wow. Chef, author, consultant, teacher, Florida's culinary icon, named that by the Jacques Pépin Foundation, a founding father of New World Cuisine, essentially invented this idea of New World Cuisine. And how I got Norman on the podcast is pretty sweet. I love when opportunity strikes. I recently did an interview with local chef Michael Bryant. He works at Decant Restaurant, and it was for my new show, Hungry for More, the show. In the interview, Michael talks about his mentor, Norman Van Aken, and how he got to work with Norman at his restaurant and how impactful this was. Michael says changed his life, completely opened his eyes to cooking, working in restaurants. And really, he says, this is where I figured out this is what I wanted to do. The video comes out and there's a comment on YouTube on the video from Norman Van Aken. So I think, go to his website, read about him, look at all the books and cookbooks he's written, check out all the awards he's received. Also see Key West was pivotal for Norman, one of my favorite places on the planet. So I reach out to him thinking, I'm not going to hear back from this guy. Oh no, he writes back. He says, it's right here in front of me. Yes, Key West was probably the luckiest place for me to land at that time, age, mindset. So I got to know more. And yes, he would love to be on the podcast. This guy, the stories, oh my gosh, his journey up until this point, the people he's met, the places he's been and worked in. I thought I was a pretty good storyteller. Y'all, the stories of this man and the way he tells the stories are just incredible. Here's Norman Van Aken. It's a completely different spelling, but I grew up in a town called Aiken, South Carolina.
AI?
A-I-K-E-N.
Yeah. Many people spell my name that way because there was a famous early 20th century poet whose name was Carl Aiken, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
And people like throwing an I in there. Is that what the town is named from?
Oh God,
Maybe.
I don't know.
Well, I believe that, in the old country, from which my, ancestors would come from on the paternal side, it would be Aken, A-U-K-E-N.
Okay.
Von Aken, meaning from the town of Aachen, which is usually A-A-C-H-E-N. And boy, now we know more about that name than we need to know.
Well, I like it. I love a good history lesson anytime. But Norman Van Aken, I've been saying your name in my head for probably a week now. Thank you so much for being here. Chef, author, consultant, teacher, Florida's culinary icon. What?
That was compliments of the great Jacques Pépin and his foundation. They're the ones that gave me that appellation not so long ago.
Man, that's incredible. Before I kick off this interview with my usual question, I just have to read something that I found on your website. It's a quote from the Smithsonian. Before the celebrity chef craze, before the start of Food Network, Norman Van Aken was starting a revolution. He was doing something unheard of at the time, taking local ethnic flavors, merging them together at restaurants where he worked.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, that was a big surprise to see that in the Smithsonian, something that your parents and your grandparents would revere, something like the Smithsonian, and to see it, and well, I don't know if the picture exists online. It probably does somewhere, but the picture takes place and I was cooking in Key West and I was 38 at that point in time. And that was really when I was starting to find my own individual voice versus the collation of voices that you learn from, which is important and necessary because for the first eight, whatever number of years, for some people it maybe is 6, and for some people it's maybe forever. But for me, I was learning from disparate sources, and then it became not so many different places, but my own place and my own expression. And that happened for me, thanks, I think, in large part to being in Key West
Oh,
at that time. at that
We're
time,
we're going to
which
talk
was
about
prior
Key
to Jimmy
West.
Buffett's Margaritaville. Prior.
We're going to talk a lot about Key West. Maybe one of my favorite places
Yeah.
right now,
You,
currently. Um,
yeah.
Norman Van Aken, where are you from originally?
I was born in a little town about 40 minutes northwest of Chicago. The name of this town is Diamond Lake. Population at the time was 15,000. And it was a beautiful place, bucolic place to grow up. The Midwest is flat, pretty much, but it was kind of hilly, and there was a lot of lakes. We lived on a lake
Mm.
essentially, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. And I lived there until I was old enough to hitchhike out of there, and that's what I did.
Where did you hitchhike to?
Key West.
No, stop. Really?
Yeah.
How old? How old?
19.
Wow. Okay, go back a little bit. Growing
Yep.
up in this small beautiful town in
hmm
outside Chicago. Was food
hmm
important growing up? Was food important to your family?
Mm, two-parter. Very important to my mother, and my grandmother who came to live with us when I was 10. My father liked to go out to dinner, but he was a steak and potatoes person. He was a new and used car dealer. And when I think of my father, food-wise, I can see him standing in the kitchen in a swimming suit, eating a hot dog out of the refrigerator with nothing on it, nothing. Or I can see him when my mom and dad split up when I was 9 and a half, and but he would have us sometimes on the weekend, and I saw him making me a sandwich. My father was quite an athlete, and his hands were incredibly powerful from being a handball player. But he was making me a sandwich, and it might have been like a bologna sandwich, and he put his hand on the sandwich to cut it, and he just pushed all of his fingers straight through the bread to the counter. And I was horrified. I was just like, have you never made a sandwich before? I
Right,
don't
right.
I don't know. But on my mom's side, oh yes. And the fundamental memories that caused me to eventually gravitate to the kitchens were so much formed when my mom would be making putting up strawberry jam and putting up tomatoes. She was in the Navy in World War II. And then when she came out, there was a lot of things called victory gardens in various places, and those were something that, citizens began to do to um, be more self-reliant.
Okay.
In certain parts of the country, that's how it's always been. My mom had a garden, and I loved being in the kitchen with my mother and my sisters and making this stuff and collaborating and smelling the food and all of that. But nowhere in the world did anything enter my mind about being a chef until I was much further along in life.
Interesting. You said grandma came to live with you when you were
Yeah.
about 10.
Yeah, my mother's mother, my Nana, our
Uh,
Nana, my
oh,
sisters and
Nana.
my Nana.
I
Yeah.
have such a soft spot for grandparents. Was
Mhm.
Nana a good cook?
She thought she was really good, so I thought she was really good. She was, she had tons of confidence. Trish, I think it's a true story, and it's definitely a familial heirloom story that my great great grandmother on my mother's side was the baker for the Queen of England when the Queen would spend time in her Scottish residency in the summer.
Whoa.
So I think in some way Nana felt like she had royal blood when it came to being in the kitchen.
Sure.
And believe me, I mean, me and my sisters thought that she could walk on water.
Mm.
As a writer, one of the things that I've done is I'm on Substack now, but before I had a radio show for 4 years, and they were short shows, 4 minutes long, and it was just me reading into the microphone a
Mm.
story or an account of some sort that I'd written. And one of the stories was titled Nana's Hands. And when I think about cooking in my mind's eye, many times I can see the way she would peel a hard-boiled egg or the way she would peel a potato, or how she could plunge her hands into the steaming hot sink to wash the dishes,
Mhm.
these things. And I mean, I just thought, I mean, there were so many things that she just kind of took my breath away. She was boiling some corn one day, and my mom was always at work. She was a restaurant person, and she was boiling some corn for us kids for dinner one day, and she took her dish towel and tossed it right over the boiling water to trap the steam in it. And I remember looking up at her like, you can just do that,
Yeah.
with a towel?
Yeah.
Like you're not supposed to use aluminum foil or a lid or something. And so yeah, you said you're a sucker for
I
grandparents.
am, and that made me so emotional. I'm from South Carolina. My grandma would she was a farmer and an amazing cook. She would take baked potatoes right out of the oven, and I would say, "Grandma, can you do the thing for me?" And she would slice it, and she would take it bare hands and smush it, so like all the potato came out. And I could barely touch it. I couldn't eat it for 10 minutes because it was, lava. And here she is just smushing it with her bare hands, and I thought she was again she could do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't often have the opportunity to say this, but my grandfather on my father's side did cook. And he didn't cook often, but he would cook for holidays. And there was something about seeing a man in the home kitchen
Mm.
cooking that also opened a door in my brain.
I'm sure, and I think that's the reason why I asked this question, why food's important growing up, because it certainly was important for me, and I think that shapes your palate, it shapes your food brain, it shapes how you are in the kitchen. I think it plays a huge role in who we are as adults.
Totally. There was no conversation about being a chef at the age I was when I was growing up. I don't think there in many places in America, not just in this little area of Illinois that we lived in, but it just really wasn't part of the world of it the way it is now. I mean, now kids are 7 years old and watching cooking shows,
I
so
know.
it's different. Um, I wouldn't trade my growing up for anybody else's, but it wasn't in the dialogue. I didn't watch anybody. I didn't watch Julia Child. I mean, people that I later came to cook with and know as a person.
Yeah.
Um, Jacques Pépin. I mean, he was on television a lot as well with Julia
Right.
oftentimes. I didn't watch any of those shows, but I did have those memories and I did love flavors in a very powerful way. God.
I love it. 19, you little rebel, you decide to hitchhike to, of all places, Key West. Why Key West? And what year was this?
Um, 71.
Okay.
I I was I I had a relationship with a girl, with my girlfriend, and I guess she figured out I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and so she decided to drop me. And I can't really blame her in retrospect because I was all over the place. I was working all kinds of jobs, including I was a carny worker for a while, traveling from little town to little town,
Oh my
putting
gosh,
together.
I love it. You were a carny?
I was a carny. Not for long. I got electrocuted, not to death, but I got severely shocked by the Ferris wheel one night when the Ferris wheel wasn't properly grounded. And I think it was because this carnival troupe was really uh operating without many licenses, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I was brokenhearted. And I
Oh.
went to a party that a friend of mine's brothers, well, my friend and his brothers were having in the Illinois town of Champaign-Urbana, where the University of Illinois is,
Hmm.
which was a hitchhike ride down there first. And so I get down there and it's March and it is shitty cold and still dark and I hated it and I was brokenhearted by the girl. And the party was kind of breaking up and I said, there was three brothers in this family, and the middle one was not there at the party. And I said, "Where's your brother Steve?" Oh, he went down to Key West. Things were getting a little heated up here for him, getting a little trouble. And I said, "He's in Key West? Wait a minute. Where's Key West? Where's Key West again?" It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a long party. And they said, you go to Miami and you keep on going down there.
Right.
And so, well, I said, that sounds really good. So with two other brothers, not related, we went to Key West that night. Well, it took
No.
36 hours to get there, but we rolled in. It was 3 o'clock in the morning or so. It was beautiful. It smelled so good. And traveling over the bridges with almost no light, but the starlight was just magical. And then we pull into where he lived, and he said, "Hey, great," and the party started, and we just crashed on the floor for, the month or something. Then I went broke, and I had to go back to Illinois and get a different job, and I got a job. Um, I was a roofer for a while.
Okay.
That didn't last very long. And then I got a job answering an ad in the newspaper for a short order cook. First time I was cooking. And it was a diner in the town that was one town over from where we lived and were raised. The town I was actually born in because that's where the hospital was. And I was at that diner as a kid sometimes, because it was the diner in the area. Our little town didn't really have a diner like that. But I had memories of being there, but that was not that really wasn't my present state of mind.
Sure.
And answering the ad for the job was, I don't know a thing about cooking. But they hired me. $3.25 an hour. You start tomorrow.
All right. And you were doing what kind of things at this diner?
I was learning how to flip eggs
Okay.
and make pancakes and short order. I mean, I work breakfast and lunch, and I decided, well, I'm going to save up enough money to get back to Key West. That was my goal. My car cost $100, and that car was not going to make it to Key West, so I figured I'd be hitchhiking again. But anyway, it was such a change for me, Trish, because the jobs that I had before that, working not only in the carnival but also in factories. I worked in a mason jar factory where my job was to shovel the glass that had fallen off the pallets and broken and onto a conveyor belt that would be remelted and made into new glass. So I was essentially breeding broken glass. Those were not jobs that promised a bright future.
Mm-mm.
But I I made it back down to Key West, and I got a job in a barbecue place called the Midget.
Okay.
And it was open 24 hours. And so the guy who hired me, everybody in Key West had a nickname, it seemed like, and his name was Budman. And I think the bud part was from a flowering plant. And he, I said, Mister, I've never cooked barbecue before. I have cooked. I was a short order cook in Illinois. And he said, son, that doesn't matter. You're working the midnight shift. The people who come to eat there will be so fucked up they won't know the difference.
Right.
That was a boost of confidence. And so, pardon my language, but it was
No,
the
I
way
love
he's.
it.
So anyway, I learned from an African American gentleman, another nickname. His nickname was Bicycle Sammy. And Bicycle Sammy had the most incredible bicycle, just adorned like you wouldn't believe, huge horn and tassels and basket that you could put a whole case of shrimp in. And he was a Navy cook, I'm sure. And he had that arcane diner lingo, like he put the if there was scrambled eggs on toast, he'd say Adam and Eve on a raft, float them,
Oh God, I
and
love
all
that.
that kind of stuff. And I couldn't. I think sometimes he would say this stuff because he knew I wouldn't understand what he was talking about. But that was my second job. I ran out of money again, went back to Illinois again, and got a job. Now I got a job in a French restaurant in a big, well, not so big, but in a fancy inn. And the only reason I got the job was years before that, my mother worked there. And
Okay.
so they figured, well, that we loved Ruth. She was fantastic. He's got long hair, but let's give him a try. And so now I've got a menu in front of me that is mostly like French 1960s terminology. And it wasn't the 60s, I was not
Right.
that, but I was working there. This was around 74. And I was now working with people who had all kinds of experience. And it was a revelation to me. But I had never been to school or anything. So it was real daunting too.
Sure.
But I still, but I like this. I liked my immediate superior, who was a Japanese man, who once upon a time was the chef of the place, but he had gotten stomach cancer and he was leaving this earth. And they kept him because out of kindness. But instead of having the job as the executive chef anymore, he was become more like a prep cook with me. And
Wow.
in the afternoons, in between lunch and dinner, most of the men, and they were all men, almost without exception at this point in time, they would either retire to the bunkhouse they lived in behind the inn. These guys didn't have families. I mean, or they would go to the track or something like that, and then come back. But for almost 2 hours, Toki and I would have the time to do the simple prep, but also he would talk to me about, travels through the Orient and this world that I had no knowledge of. And I'll never forget, Trish, that one spring day he went out to the yard of the inn and he picked dandelion leaves. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? I could see through a window. What are you gonna do with those? You can throw them in the garbage. And he came back into the kitchen and he made us like a stir fry with some filet mignon and dandelion leaves and ginger and soy. And it was like so phenomenal. And even though he knew he was dying, and we all knew he was dying, but he was like still had this like kid-like fascination for making good food.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do
And
you,
it was poetic and it really affected me. But still, I mean, it's still a number of years before the light really switched on for me. And I went from being, this is a job, and I'm eventually, I don't know, join a band or get hired by a newspaper or do something different. But I wasn't at all in my head thinking, yeah, I'll be a chef one day, not for
huh.
the first 6 or 7 years.
Wow. And this the guy that you were working with at this French restaurant, it sounds like he opened your eyes to some things. You had been cooking, so that wasn't new to you, but it sounds like the dandelion leaves, this really opened up like, huh, he took that and created this.
Yeah, right. And well, I always was searching for something that would let me be creative. I mean, my
Okay.
whole MO, even though those shitty jobs, working in the factory or the roofer or the other things, that wasn't creative, and I hated it. And I hated the time that it took to do it
Mm.
because it wasn't artful. And I wanted to be a part of a team that was going to be doing something, or I wanted to be doing it my own. Somehow or another, I wanted to make things that were going to be memorable to people.
Did you get back to Key West?
Yeah, yeah. I did. In the midst of all that, actually, that first diner job, the boss asked me if I'd work a party one night. Uh, and I said, will you pay me $1 an hour more? And he said, yes. And I said, yeah, I'll work. And so the daytime front of the house, these ladies, mostly all ladies, and I was, 21, 2 years old, 21, and they were like older ladies. They were like 30 and 40. And but then the night shift came on and there were some high school girls, and one of them was a girl that eventually we got married. But that was some years later. But she and I then went to Key West, and that's when I started living there um, in in for real, and staying and not just, having a job and losing the job and then moving on back to Key West. Although we did ourselves go out to Colorado for a little while. And then, but my time in well, that where things changed for me, because I think this is kind of central to this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Where things changed for me as work, I got a job, and I was hired as the chef of a restaurant on Duval Street. And again, I did not need to know very much, and I didn't know very much, but I was the chef probably because I was willing to work the hours, not because of my my talent. That did not work out because the man who owned the place was furious with me because I wouldn't use Cheese Whiz to make a sauce for fish, for shrimp.
Oh.
And he fired me. So I again got another job. This time I got a job down the street at the Pier House Hotel, which is still there. Beautiful hotel right at the end of Duval Street, right where Sunset Celebration
Mm-hmm.
takes place.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
That's where the lights started to come on because I was working with people who cared a lot about their job, about making excellent food. They were competitive with each other. A number of them had gone to the Culinary Institute of America recently. They were youngish, and some were people who had worked, like, say, the cruise lines and were from Italy and France and
Hmm.
things like that. So there's this culture of knowledge that I'm now in the midst of. People who were my age and younger that knew terms that I did not know, which pissed me off. And and this guy who was from Wisconsin, he said to the boss, who was a woman, surprisingly in this t day and age, she'd
Yeah.
graduated CIA, and he said, "Hey, chef, I think I want to make a veal velouté and for the lunch special tomorrow." And I'm like, "The fuck, veal? Did you say?" And he said velouté, like
Like, come on, moron. Yeah.
yeah, like how do you not know that?
Right.
And I'm like, how do you know that term? And he goes, well, I went to cooking school. I'm like, hmm. I go, how much did that cost? And then he told me what it cost. And I said, well, that's out the window. That ain't not going to happen. And then he said to me, why don't you read? And I don't say, and I was like, now I'm mad. I
Sure.
read. I read a lot. And he goes, do you read cooking books? And I said,
Mm.
like whose? And he said, James Beard. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. Didn't want to give him the satisfaction. Well, I went to the bookstore that day, and I don't know how I had the cash to do it because I didn't have a checkbook. I bought James Beard's Theory and Practice of Good Cooking, the first book I ever bought, and I can reach right up here right now and pull
Mm.
that book off the shelf. And that changed so much because it was like, these are the tools. This is where it moves. This is how I begin to understand. In the beauty of that book, and all the chefs who have come to work with me subsequently over all these years, they know this story. But that book broke things down in terms of the techniques of cooking. It wasn't appetizers, salads, fish, meat, dessert. It was broiling, grilling, steaming, sautéing. So it was much more scholastic
Yep.
in a way. And I took the one knife I owned, a French knife that I owned, and I would put that down like a paperweight, and I would at home start to cook things and make things, or on my day off with friends coming over. I'm going to make eggs Benedict, and they're like, okay, we'll come over, And I began to um, seriously augment my knowledge of cooking through books, books. And if you were here in my house, you would know that in a heartbeat because all you'd have to do is look at a wall
Yeah.
and you'd see a wall of books.
Well, on your website, it says, sir, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy books. And that's kind of the same thing.
It is. Yes, I grew up encouraged very much by my Nana and the lady who lived across the street, who we called Auntie. They gave me books for my birthday presents for Christmas, just for the heck of it. I was a reader. I would climb a tree with a book. I would read a book on the bus. I would read a book anywhere. Always reading. Always had my nose in a book.
Mm.
Lay on the floor in a rainstorm, reading my grandmother's encyclopedias. Loved books. But it was never cookbooks until this period of time at Key West. And so
Did
um,
did
that
the
changed
James
things.
Beard book, did
Yeah.
that, you said that was really a pivotal moment for you.
Yeah.
And that
Mm.
was when, do you think you went from like, I don't want to say that's when your journey started, but was for you on this path, this culinary path where you like, here we go. It clicked. You got hooked.
I was on the path. I was on the journey,
Mm-hmm.
but the lights weren't on.
Gotcha.
That book turned the lights on. And that book led me to another book and to another book and to another book and to
Mm-hmm.
another book. And I'm flashing back to a house we had just right by the graveyard. Our son had just been born. And I'm sitting at a desk, kind of like I am here right now. And if you did time lapse photography, you'd see that desk would have three books, and 5 books, then 8 books, and then the desk would be book to book at the end. And I would take whatever money that we could afford that didn't go to rent and food and the electric bill and all that stuff, and buy another book.
Mm.
And and then when Janet got very homesick when Justin was born, our son was born, and so she's one of 8 children. So she said, "We got to go back home. I miss my family." And we grew up right across a lake from each other, so my family was up there too,
Hmm.
not nearly as large a family, but so we went back up north. I'm going to try and take this a little faster for you because it's otherwise it wouldn't be till tomorrow. Um, I got a job by a restaurateur who was a very good restaurateur, really understood the totality of the restaurant world. His name was, he's still alive, Gordon Sinclair. And he hired me to be the chef of a restaurant that that really took me to another level because now I was understanding the world of restaurants that were as it was going on in America in the late this by Justin was born in 80s, so let's say early 80s.
Okay.
And he was turning me on or teaching me about, the work that Wolfgang Puck is doing in California, or Alice Waters, or Jeremiah Tower, or some of the restaurants in New York that he would have been familiar with. And sometimes he would give me a book. Um, uh, Many people who watch any show on food would probably know the name Charlie Trotter. Charlie was a busboy in the restaurant and asked me for a job in the kitchen, and I turned him down. And I said, "Kid, you are too skinny. The wind off the Lake Michigan's going to blow you away," uh, or something. But anyway, Charlie came. He talked his way into the kitchen, and then thank God he did. And we became the best of friends, and that relationship just continued to grow. Well, after 2 years of being back home in the family, um, the boss of the restaurant, the owner of the restaurant, said to me, "We have a property in Florida. Would you ever consider moving back to Florida?" And my wife goes, "Yeah, let's get the hell out of here. I've had a winter." So we went back to Florida, and I spent a year in a town north of Miami doing that job. But then we went down to Key West to get the hell out and to see Key West. We loved Key West.
Mm.
Justin was born in Key West, and I got a job offer to take over Louie's backyard in Key West. Yeah. So, and that now became the next huge chapter. And it was where I went from being um I'd say unknown to writing
Mm.
my first book
Hmm.
and becoming known across the country because there was this new American cuisine was being talked about. It was in the magazines. There weren't podcasts yet, but people were talking about what's the difference between the Southwestern food
Hmm.
movement, the California food movement, New York food movement, whatever, and what was going on in Florida. Well, nobody was coalescing those things, and I kind of went, maybe I should. That's what I should do. Maybe I should stop cooking all these different cuisines and try to figure out where I'm at, where I live.
Mm.
So I went through this process where I kind of like pushed all the books away and began to drive like a detective trying to crack the case. I wanted to know the roots of Key West. I wanted to know what was the terroir, the identity, the soul of where I was living. What was it like in the 1880s to to be in a home and eat food? What was it like if you were uh, a merchant coming over here
Hmm.
from the Indies to the West Indies, and the food what it would have been. So I began to wrap my menus around something that had no name, and people were quite curious about it because some of it was kind of soul foodish, and they were like, "Well, why would we pay a lot of money?" The way we used to when you had a French restaurant, when it was a French restaurant before. But they ate my food and then were like, "Oh, okay, this guy's all right." So the Miami Herald gave me 4 stars.
Mm.
The Random House came and they offered me a book contract, and things moved along.
Interesting. And so this is, and you're referring to New World Cuisine,
And
which
that's what
you,
I had. That's what I didn't have a name for, but then it became the.
that's what it was. And you are known as, I mean, the founding guy of New World Cuisine. And so you say it was like you're like a detective, but you
Yeah.
were finding in this beautiful place of Key West, it's I don't melting pot for lack of a better term. So many different cultures, so many different
Yeah.
people, so many
Mhm.
different perspectives, and then so many different kinds of food, spices, all these things right here at your fingertips.
Yes. And they, the local people, of course, were eating them. This is this is the world they grew up in.
Right.
They're the conchs, as they're called, the people who are born and raised in Key West. But the Caribbean, especially Cuba, Bahamian, Haitian, the old South of Navy had a big, strong presence there. So there was a southern edge to some of the food too, and it really began to make my menus have much more of a kind of cohesive focus to them than if I was up in Miami. I think I would not have gotten the message to think more wrapping my mind around the way, I sometimes compare it to the way Faulkner wrote his books all around a particular county. Most of, the families were all from this county, but in doing something hyper regionalized, his characters and his stories became universal.
Mm.
And I think that's also true of some of the best authors and some of the best playwrights, Tennessee Williams, who lived there, who I fed, who I met, who I shook hands with, who I was in his house, who kissed me on the cheek one day.
What?
Yes, I was in a play, and he invited the folks in the play to come to his house for a party. We did. Unfortunately, Mr. Williams was beginning to slip his gears a
Mm.
little bit by that and didn't remember the party was going to happen, but his housekeeper did, and um,
Slip his gears. That's great.
so on the way out the door as we were leaving, he was shaking hands, and then he wrapped one arm around me and gave me a smooch on on the
Mm.
cheek. But yeah, behind me over here on my bureau, there's a picture of he and I shaking hands that last night at the play. But it was a great place for
Yeah.
art and bohemians, and
Yeah.
I mean, and then of course, then we had a young guy from Alabama named Jimmy Buffett come to town and start writing songs and mythologizing the place in a way that hit a international nerve.
Really. It really, truly did. Is there a dish, maybe from Louie's, that highlights, showcases this new world cuisine? Something that was really just like stands out to you still, that was like, this is what I'm talking about. This dish is what I'm talking about.
So the dishes begin to flood my
I'm
mind
sure.
thinking of it, in some ways. I mean, maybe an example. I learned to cook a style of fish from a Black woman who was born and raised in the Bahama Village area of Key West. Her name was Betty Howard, and she was known as Black Betty. She called herself Black Betty. She was the stitch. She was the breakfast cook, but she taught me the conch way, the Key West way, which was that you would take a beautiful fillet of Key West yellowtail, caught usually within, I mean, caught and cooked within 2 or 3 or 4 hours.
Oh,
You would lay it in some lightly seasoned flour. Then you would dip in a custard. This is essential of beaten eggs and half. And then you would lay it into a very hot pan that you just added some clarified butter to. It gets golden and lacy, sort of like the way an omelet will look. If you're not going for the French omelet, which is no color, but you're going for more like the diner omelet, which means color. And the dish that I developed out of that is still on my menus today, and it's
mm,
the most popular dish that I've ever put on a menu. And I'd learned the fish part of that from a woman born and raised in Key West.
mm,
That, that is to me an example of New World cuisine because it so speaks to the roots of the place.
yep. Yeah. Absolutely. When did Normans happen?
I reached a point in Key West where I realized I was going to end up with tattoos, a nickname, and probably a habit that I didn't want to have.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, and so, once the book was written, an opportunity came along to go to the mainland and take a job. And I had with Louise, I'd kind of gotten to the best. I was cooking at the best place in town. I was recognized and I was compensated, but I wasn't the owner. And
Mm,
that began to chafe at me. My dad owned his own car lots, and I knew that in my soul, I needed to be the owner of my own place. And I wasn't going to do it by working for other people
yeah.
for a salary that was so-so. So I went to the mainland, went to Miami, got hired, and was working in Miami Beach. People began to write about that. I was in Time Magazine, I was in the London Observer, I was in the New York Times, and I got into a fist fight with the owner and was out of a job. Mickey Rourke was the referee of that fight, by the way.
What?
Mickey Rourke was crashing at that hotel. It was in a hotel. But he was such a mess. But he and the owner were buddies. Anyway, so Mickey was the ref, if you can imagine. And so the owner was trying to fire my partner, who was the manager, and I'm like, I'm in the kitchen. He's the manager, and
Mm,
he's like, I'm going to be the manager anyway. So I was I was pretty despondent, but I did have my advance for the next cookbook, which would be the third cookbook. And so I had a little tiny bit of money, and I went to a restaurant one night with my lawyer buddy, and there was a guy sitting at the bar waiting for his table. And he said, "Are you Norman Van Aken?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Well, my name is Teddy Gelman. If you ever want to open your own restaurant, I'll invest."
okay.
And that was 1994. To wrap things up just a little bit, by 1995, we opened the doors of Norman's in Coral Gables, and we were nominated by the James Beard
Mm,
Foundation as the best new restaurant in America.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you believe in right place, right time?
Oh, yes, I do. I,
Oh,
I absolutely do. I think t talent is essential, but luck is essential too.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what is luck by another definition, but right place, right time,
Right
right
place.
girl.
Yeah. Right place, right time. Norman's, I mean, I feel like, and this is how the chef that I just recently interviewed, Michael Bryant, he was at this restaurant and he said you opened his eyes to a whole new world of cooking, of food, of being in a kitchen.
Yeah, Michael was stood out. I mean, I had probably 10 people on that line at that time. Michael was working there and he stood out for his passion, his energy, and his heart, which you still see.
Mm. Did you enjoy, because I'm assuming in this restaurant and in lots of restaurants that you've worked before Norman's, you were a teacher of, whether you knew it or not, maybe you did, but was that fun for you? Did you enjoy being that mentor, that teacher person?
Totally. And I feel like I was mentored by my mother and my grandmother in different ways, but the power of education was extremely important to me. Um, I did have a tiny scholarship to go to college on a teaching scholarship. I ended up not doing that because I was too much of a wanderer. Anyway, but in the kitchens and in the restaurant too, they would they would jokingly call it that where they worked was the University of Norman because I was always you got to read this. You got to read at least this page or this chapter, or you got to go buy this book. You got to get your education too. And
Mm,
so, and beyond, I mean, yeah, you're going to get educated in a kitchen. You're going to learn how to make those dishes. But I feel like that's just a fragment of
mm,
what it could be.
right. What is it about restaurants? And quickly, I love going out to dinner. I
Mhm.
love sitting at the bar and getting a cocktail and having a little food and then
Mhm.
snagging a table and ordering multiple things off the menu so we can share with people. I love dining out. One of my top two favorite things to do on the planet. What is it about restaurants, you think?
In the right restaurants, it is theater and it is nurturing. And it is a chance to, if you're with the right people, and it could be one other person, or it could be three or four of your friends, whatever, a chance to like throw off the weight of the world and breathe,
Mm.
just the menu is a story, and the foods are these emotions that you can have touch yourself and watch the person that you care about feeling the same way. It's a conversation that you could have that you might never have at work because you're able to, the guard drops. Our job in creating restaurants is to create a safe space for fantasy and for enjoyment.
Mm. Absolutely. I love that. And talking about being in a kitchen, a restaurant kitchen and cooking, for you, what is it? What is the draw? What is it about being in a restaurant kitchen and being the chef or being part of this team, a pirate back in the kitchen, the misfits, right? Like what is it about that you love so much?
I was always looking for the camaraderie and the team, the troupe,
Mm-hmm.
the acting troupe.
Mm-hmm.
I was always looking for the team that cared about it in the way I was caring about it. I wanted to put together the people that could have the various types of knowledge, whether, a pastry chef has a much different type of knowledge than I do. A butcher has a different kind of skill set than I would. I mean, I can butcher, but I mean, people who do that primarily, they can do it in ways that it's pretty amazing. I wanted to put together the team that I felt that could articulate my particular um, vision for food. I wanted, and I still do. I still, even though I have a restaurant, I feel like, you can have a restaurant and that's your band, and it's like they're gonna go on stage and they're gonna do the greatest hits kind of thing. But there's a piece of me that's like, I would like to also do a different, might be called a vanity project. I don't know, but something where I could almost make up the food like every day. It's the
Mm-hmm.
menu is going to change every day. I'm only going to take care of maybe 12 or 15 people. I just want to, I still love to make the plates.
Mm-hmm.
I still like to make up my mind as I'm going along. I remember when my son, who grew up in the business, but he came home after wandering around America and other places. He said, "Dad, teach me how to cook." And I'm like, "You grew up in the restaurant with us." I mean, he goes, "No, yeah, but I mean, I want you to teach me how to cook." And he began to ask me very specific questions as I would be making us dinner. And I'd realized that most of the time I didn't know the answer to because a it was a body language. It was
Mm.
like I'd written cookbooks, so I could take you there. But why'd you make the decision to turn the vegetable halfway at that particular point in time? And I'm like, because I'm observing it. I am in this moment. It's a very Zen-like feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the engagement is tremendous. I cook every day. I don't have to. I'm sure I could let other people cook for me, but I need to. I still need to do that.
Right. And it's because it's in you.
It sure is.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of cookbooks, sir, you have quite a collection. I wrote some of maybe all the titles down. Feast of Sunlight, Exotic Fruit, Norman's New World Cuisine, New World Kitchen, My Key West Kitchen. I don't have that cookbook, but I'm gonna. I,
Okay.
I, I really want my Key West Kitchen. No
Okay.
Experience Necessary, Florida Kitchen. You have quite a few titles.
I do. I do.
Are they right
Yeah,
up there?
yeah, they are. They are. Yeah. Well, there's reference books on that side, and then a few more reference books, and there's my books over there, and then the main library's over there.
Regarding cookbooks, what is it about sharing this knowledge, right? I mean, you're sharing all of this experience, this knowledge from what you've learned in Key West, what you've learned in Florida, what you've learned in this restaurant, and you're literally just saying, here you go, reader, take what I've learned. What is it about that you love so much?
Hmm. I want to empower them.
Mm-hmm.
I want the readers to feel the same comfort level that I would like them to have when they enter their kitchen. One of my favorite chefs of all time is a French chef named Roger Verger, and I got to meet him and cook with him. Also, he was probably 75 at that point in time. But he ends the prologue to his book, um, Cuisines of the Sun, which is in the library. But his last sentence was courage, courage, chefs, to your stoves.
Oh,
Like sort of telling us to go off and be brave.
wow.
And 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 this was a book I bought long, long time ago, 1980. Um, there was something about his style that really spoke to me because he had traveled to North Africa and he was willing to do things in his cuisine that were much broader than most of the chefs in France at that point in time. I wanted I wanted to I wanted to tell the stories through my food, but I also wanted to, probably as important to me, tell the folks where these stories came from,
Yeah.
where they came from Toki, the Japanese chef, where they came from some night in, Key West with a friend of mine and us tasting a fish sandwich or something. I wanted to populate my books with the same sort of artistry and storytelling that was important to me as the songwriters who made such a big difference to me, the playwrights who made such a big difference to me. And being given the opportunity, of course, Trish, was essential. I would not have had the gumption to have written the first cookbook if they didn't ask me to write that book.
Right. Right.
But once you get cut, once you do crack that, that glass ceiling,
Uh-huh.
then the opportunity can repeat itself. And I was willing to put the time in. I mean, I wrote Feast of Sunlight. 90% of it, I wrote it after finishing my shift at Louie's backyard, working saute. Everybody was going out to the bars, and I would go down into my little office, put my Walkman on, and listen to Linda Ronstadt sing
Oh,
for 2 hours until I got at least three or four recipes done. And that's how
wow.
I
Love it. I love that process. That's amazing.
And then
Um,
when the memoir that you talked about, you mentioned the title of that,
yeah.
No Experience Necessary. By this time, I was much older, and to write a memoir, I think you should be. But I would set the alarm for 5 a.m. and get up when it was pitch dark outside and go down to the dining room table and work for 3 hours, 4 hours before I would break that concentration to go on and do my other job. But
Hmm.
you have to be willing to do that if you're going to write.
I was thinking discipline. That popped in my head when you were saying that. You have to be disciplined if you want to get accomplish certain things. Yeah.
The 10,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell speaks about and how the
Yeah.
Beatles attained that before they'd ever stepped on an Ed Sullivan stage.
Love it. Oh my gosh. You're an artist, sir. I know you know this about yourself, but it sounds like you've been in plays, you've acted in plays.
Not well, but yes.
I'm a total local community theater nerd. One of my most favorite things growing up. I
Yeah,
have the best memories of being in theater as a young person, as a young adult. The
that's
best.
tremendous.
It is
And my
truly.
granddaughter is also right now 13 years old, and I've seen her in four productions, if not more.
It is. It
Yeah,
is the
it's a
best.
blessing.
But you're this actor. You're a chef. You're a writer, an author. I mean, you're an artist.
I am fortunate, extremely fortunate to get to do what I do.
Mm.
I didn't want to be a factory guy. I didn't even want to be the carny guy. I wanted to be a person who could conceive of an idea and see it become actualized.
Mm.
And I get to do that with my food, and I get to do that with my guests. There's many, many years where I did not walk out into the dining room and I didn't converse with the guests. And then later, especially after, you know, I'd gotten some notoriety, they expected it. And plus the world changed. We didn't it was a little while before chefs ever walked out in the dining room and talked with the guests. I mean,
Yeah.
if a chef was in the dining room, like there was a problem in the kitchen or something, I don't know, why's that guy out here? But now it's like, you walk around, you know them, they know you, you shake hands, you inquire about their family, you ask about the dishes they've had. I mean, I've walked out and met half the Rolling Stones in my dining room.
Oh my God. The, this
It's
life you've lived, sir, is just nutty.
there is a lot of it that just um it bemuses me as well. And as I say, I'm fortunate and I love sharing it and I love sharing it with everybody. I mean,
Mm.
as I said, I'm writing on Substack and a lot of people that I ask about it, they say, what do you want me to write about? And they're like, I want you to write the way it used to be before it became so PC.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank goodness. Um, I want to wrap up, but I do want to talk about your nonprofit, Get Cooking.
Yeah. Yes.
How did this start? How did this come to be?
Fundamentally, a woman named Stacy Archer, she was doing something like this out of her home through Zoom, teaching people, very small, I mean, DIY sort of thing. She got to know this man who was an extremely successful cruise line executive named Bob Dickinson. He was, he's very smart, and he said, "Stacy, what you're doing is great. You need to widen your network. I think you should contact Norman Van Aken. He might be able to help you in some way or another." Stacy did. Stacy's a self-starter for sure. What a ball of energy. She and I met, and we determined the thing to do was to curate a list of one chef per month who would teach the class with Stacy. And so we worked with a nonprofit in Miami first. Then she moved back to Orlando, and I thought, well, that was that. But no, my restaurant finally opened back up after COVID and all this stuff. And so now I had a reason to be in Orlando on a frequent basis. We partnered with a school there, Valencia College. We what we do is we provide the lessons for families who are extremely low income. We still do the same thing where I identify a chef who teaches with her. The chef follows the dictates of this $20 or less, feed a family of four. We want them to be able to replicate that recipe, so don't make it, too challenging. Don't use equipment that would not be in their homes, kind of thing. And now we've gone and we've everything gets delivered to their home, meal kits, no charge to the families, through the donors, through the kindness of donors and
Wow.
sponsors. And we've gone from 40 families to 100, and we're seeking to do more. And with the Zoom technology, I mean, really, the limit is who
Mhm.
knows? We'll see. But we're working on it. But it's now 3 years old, so
Well,
get cooking.
kudos. I think there is nothing more important than giving someone the power to know how to cook. Nothing fancy, just good,
Right.
nourishing food.
And to vary it up. I mean,
Hmm.
many families, if they're not taught some of this stuff, they don't know what some of these ingredients. They could go to a farmer's market and maybe not know what kohlrabi or something
Right.
is.
Right.
And they
Right.
could find that it's beautiful and it's cheap because it's in season and all the good things. I mean, it is the Jesus parable about teaching people to fish.
But
Both
that's
just
you're right. It's like, what the hell do I do with this?
yeah,
Do I eat it
yeah,
raw? Do I throw it in a pot? Like what? Help me.
yeah. And there aren't, we don't live anymore in the society where the grandparents are teaching
I
the
know.
young people to cook the way they used to do.
I know.
So yeah, I really am. I'm so pleased with doing Get Cooking, and I look forward to finding more sponsors and donors who believe in it.
Yeah. And well, kudos again. I think that's amazing. And I love nonprofits that are based around teaching people how to cook. This interview will air after the fact, but you have a big project coming up,
The
right?
beard one, the
Yeah.
beard. Yeah, we sure do. We are doing a beard gala. Yes, I'm sure your show will air because it's going to be our project is next Friday,
Right.
October the 10th. And I have invited about a dozen of the best chefs in Central Florida, all chefs who have been recognized by the Beard Foundation for their work. Some are semifinalists for a Beard Award. And we have winemakers, and we have booze, and we have music, and we have all kinds of fun stuff. It's not a sit-down dinner. We did a sit-down dinner for the Jacques Pépin Foundation, which is another story, and man, was that great. Love Jacques. Anyway, this one will be stations, and so the chefs will be coming in and doing different things, and people will be wandering around and tasting and hearing music.
Mm.
And the chefs, of course, we're gonna treat them well too, so they can have a little party.
Well, if you need an embedded journalist, call me.
Where do you live?
Southern Oregon,
Yeah.
all the way across this beautiful country. But yeah, in fact, getting to Key West, traveling to Key West and I'm in a small area. So getting from small area to Key West, but we did it twice. Love that place so much.
Well, when you get to go again, please let me know. I'll give you a list of places.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do. Maybe I'll scoot through because where are you based now?
We live in Miami.
Miami. Well, I'll scoot through
I go to Orlando
Miami.
every month.
Yeah,
What's that?
I'll scoot through
Yes,
Miami
we
and
do
give you a
Miami.
big old Trish hug.
We will. We'll have a glass or two of something and have a
Please. Before I get to the final three, I just want to say, Norman Van Aken, thank you so much. I call myself a storyteller. You, sir, have put me to shame today. You are quite the storyteller, and the stories that you have. Oh,
hug. Well, if they want more, they can. The memoir is also an audiobook, so they can listen to the stories as they drive.
I love it. Well, your website is a great resource
Oh,
for
yeah.
all things about you, the books you've written, and that website is normanvanaken.com. Also, you've been talking about your Substack. You're also on IG. So I'm going to
Yeah,
just encourage
my
everybody
life
to give
all
you a
up.
follow.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, how did you know that? And I go, oh, of course you know that because it's on social media. That world didn't used to exist.
No,
All right.
yeah, I hear you. Someone stopped me at the grocery store the other day and they said, "Oh, I made that comfort dish that you made." And I was like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot I put that on social media." And then I'm thinking, "You creep." And then it's like, "Oh, no, this is for a reason."
Yeah.
Okay, Norman Van Aken, I'm going to wrap up and get to the final three. Best advice you've ever been given.
Read,
That's it.
read,
That's it, kids.
read, and reread. I tell the chefs I'm going to give you three things. Don't smoke, wear good shoes, and read.
Love it. Wow, that's good. That's good advice right there. What's your happy place?
Playing pool with my son in a bar close enough to the ocean where I can see it with a good jukebox.
I love that. Are you I've always said I need to be near water and I need to be near mountains. That's a big deal for me. It sounds like you need to be near water.
Water. Yeah, I'm a coastal person. Even when we lived in the Midwest, we lived on the shoreline of a nice lake. And so I don't I don't ever want to go out, in 40-foot seas and all that good stuff that's
Mm-mm.
out there in the ocean. No. You get the fish, I'll cook the fish.
Yeah. No offense to those states that are right in the middle. I can't do it. I just can't do it.
No. No, no, no. My sister's moved to Arizona. I'm like, how in the world could you but I mean, of course there's lakes there too. But no, I like the big ocean around
Mm-hmm.
me, which is
Mm-hmm.
Key West.
Love it. And then in all things food and drink, what do you crave? What just always sounds good to you?
You mean literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally in food and drink,
Mm-hmm.
not like a
Literally.
delicious story, but you mean an actual.
Right in front of you.
Gosh, anything that's done with love would be
Oh,
great, but I
yeah.
would go for maybe I'm hungry right now, but a Neapolitan pizza would sounds pretty good to me right now.
Yeah, I think um I have a very fickle my tastes are always changing. So there's people who meal prep, the meal preppers. I think that's
Hmm.
great. but I can't do it. I don't want that thing I made Sunday again. I can't do it.
The genius comic writer Calvin Trillin talked about this subject, and he said, "In our house, um, the original meal has never been found. We're always eating leftovers." That's not
Oh,
true here, but I don't mind going to that refrigerator and my cupboards and all that and going, okay, this seems like there's nothing here, but I'm going to make something. And that's probably what I'm going to do this afternoon.
love it. Yep. I love that. Thank you again, sir, for again opening your heart and sharing all of these beautiful stories with me. It's such a privilege. I don't know why people like yourself just share these things with me, but I am so appreciative. Again, normanvanaken.com is where all of you can find your cookbooks, more information about you, your nonprofit. And again, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today.
Look how we met. We met through a friend.
I know.
Isn't that sweet? When you see him again, give him a hug for me.
I will. I will. You're going to make me cry again. I thought about this right before the interview. I love it when shit happens like this, right? You made a comment on a video I produced. I reached out to you and you were like,
That's right.
you were
That's
like,
right.
hell yeah, let's talk about Key West. And I was like, woohoo.
Okay. Well, Trish, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to sharing our time with my readers, my followers too. So I look forward to that info.
Aw, thank you. You've been listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma with me, Trish Close. You can watch this podcast and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Just search Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma. You can also listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.